Hi. Hello. Hello, Magento community. How are you? Fine. Bit tired, I guess. So, I don't want to bore you talking a lot about me. This is what I believe in and what drives me in my daily job and at Bitbull and as Magento maintainer and contributor. So if you like these values, please follow me on Twitter. Let's move quickly. I used to talk a lot about how Magento truly embraced the open source spirit by accepting pull requests, thanks to the Magento community engineering team, but this is already a very well-known story. So, yeah, now we can change the core, you can change the core, you can contribute to Magento. So, I want to focus on why I personally do it and why you can do it as well. And again, I used to talk a lot about the learning opportunities. We have great learning opportunities in doing this. We can work with very smart people, both from Magento community engineering team and with the community people. That's great. And we can learn a lot, and that will be enough. But recently an episode showed me a side effect that I want to show you that's very important and motivates me today as well. That is gratitude. Some weeks ago, this guy tweeted thanking me, among other people, for something that I did. He was right. I had no clue why he was thanking me. But then I thought, and I realized that some days before, on the MSI Slack channel, I gave him just a little advice on how to customize MSI for his needs. And I didn't realize it was so important for him until he tweeted, and his tweet literally made my day. So, the first takeaway I want to leave you is this. Why contribute? Because it's great learning opportunity, and because you can give back, and giving back and being helpful to other people is great. Someone even says that it's the secret of happiness, so keep it in mind. So at this point, I guess that most of you know what is Magento multi-source inventory project, but let me ask, please, who knows what MSI is? Okay, not everyone. MSI stands for multi-source inventory. It's a very big project. It's the biggest project driven by the community. Let me briefly introduce the story of this project. Well, it was the very first requirement of this project was documented in September 2013. And it was an internal project, but this was never developed by Magento. So in 2017, May, so just more than a year ago, the community engineering team set this challenge to the community. Why don't you develop, guided by us, this feature? And that started on May during the hackathon at Meet Magento Germany. And what is it? Well, basically is the very first user story, the very first requirement is giving the merchant the ability to natively manage multi-stock locations in Magento. And this is basically what is multi-source inventory, and this is part of the very first release that we call MVP, minimum viable product. The minimum set of functionality to let merchants accomplish this task. It is already developed and packed in Magento 2.3. It's in Magento 2.3 alpha release, and well, it will be released, I guess, very soon. There is a second milestone. This is already developed too. The development ended in August, and it will be released with Magento 2.3 point something very soon after the first release. The third milestone is basically the rest of the product backlog, and I guess that it will contain a lot of improvements based on user feedback. And it will be part of Magento 2 point something. Most important thing, this is an open source asset. MSI is and will remain an open source, freely available asset for Magento open source. This was developed thanks to the community, so it's fair that it remains available for the community. And I've used this word a lot, community. Just let me give you some numbers. This project was contributed by almost 70 people belonging to more or less 16 companies, and more than 700 pull requests were submitted. It's a big project consisting of more or less 12% of entire Magento code base. It started just like a simple user story, and it became a bundle extension of more than 30 models, just to make you understand what is MSI today. A lot of slides, not technical yet. This is a backend developer track, so let's switch to a more technical talk. What I want to talk to you about is a couple of architectural patterns that we applied on MSI. So MSI just inspired me to tell you about these things. I used to talk a lot also about DDD, domain-driven design, but it's a very theoretical topic and doesn't leave much takeaways in such a situation. So I will be more practical. This is a necessary disclaimer. What we will see once we have new technology or new patterns in hand, we can be tempted to use them everywhere. It's not that way. There can be drawbacks that we can take into account, and so consider when you learn something new if it's really needed and if the drawbacks don't give real benefits. Let's start with CQRS. How many of you have heard of use this architectural pattern? Okay, let's start from the beginning. From now on, all the Twitter box with the people that you see, I suggest you to follow them, read all that they write, all the books that they have written, because they are very important people. For those who don't know, Bertrand Meyer is one of the father of the OOP, and let's start with CQS. What is CQS? CQS stands for Common Query Separation. It's an implementation pattern. And what does it mean? Well, an example is 4,000 words. Let's see an example of a class that doesn't implement CQS. It means don't give a method of the same class two responsibilities. The responsibility to change the state of the system that we call commands, and the responsibility to return the state of the system, which we call queries. I can guess that any one of you is thinking, oh, but nobody writes code like this. I don't write code like this anymore. But don't give it always for granted. This is an example of Magento 2 code, which doesn't apply this paradigm. I'm not saying this is good or bad. I'm just telling you that this can happen. Why? Because don't look at the code. What I'm interested in is showing you the fact that this method does the two things in the same moment. It checks the status, so it returns a value, so it's a query. At the same time, it changes the status, because if it doesn't find a folder, it creates it. So this is not CQS. Let me give grants to the guy formerly known as Riccardo Tempesta, that nowadays is called the Rick, for pointing me to this example. This is very useful. Thank you, Rick. So what's CQS? CQS is simply this example. We have a class, we have two methods, and we split the responsibility in two methods. One is a query, get quantity, reads the value, and that's it, and returns it. Set quantity, or sorry, increment quantity is a command that changes the state of the system, changes this variable, and doesn't return anything. That's CQS. So what's CQRS then? Despite a slight change in the name, it's a big shift, because we shift from an implementation pattern to an architectural pattern, because CQRS stands for Command Queries Responsibility Segregation. It states that we no more have to deal with separation of responsibility inside one class, but we talk about systems. We split this responsibility among different systems that can be different classes, but also different services. So this shift, okay, another example. It's easy. Sorry, I think that it's not entirely readable, but basically in this example we have two classes, one that reads, one that exposes the method to read something, and one that exposes the method to change something. Let me show you how we apply this in MSI. Just a cool diagram. I use the icons by Laurie Krell, which is writing the MSI user guides, wonderful documentation. how did we apply this in MSI? Well, first of all, we defined the two entities, source and stocks. A source is typically a physical place, a warehouse, a brick-and-mortar store, where we store physical objects, products. And source items are the entities through which we write the quantity. So we use the source items to change the state of the systems. That's where we find our commands. We also define stocks. Stocks are aggregation of different sources. Remember, multi-source inventory is the ability for the merchant to define multiple sources for products. So we aggregate multiple sources into stocks, and stocks is where we read the state of the system. So we read from stocks and we write into sources. This is how we split the two. And these are two classes, okay, two different classes. Data consistency is guaranteed by an indexation mechanism that in CQRS terminology is called projection. And yeah, what are the benefits of such an approach? Well, we apply the single responsibility principle. So this leads us to keep things more simple. By splitting responsibility, we can keep classes more simple, and simpler classes are simpler to modify and to adapt to business changes that happen. There are some drawbacks, as mentioned before. Well, CQRS is just a bit complicated. It's a new thing, so you have to perform the right analysis to understand if it's suited to your needs or not. We have to handle with duplication because we have two models that represent the same domain objects. And yeah, we have to deal with consistency because consistency is no more a transactional thing. We can't use CQRS. We are discouraged to use CQRS in contexts where we have, for example, financial transactions, because I write something and it's not guaranteed that if I read that information after writing, I get the value that I wrote. Okay, we eventually have the consistency through the projection of this data. That's, for example, what happens when you change your profile photo on Facebook or LinkedIn and you don't see it updated at once. That's why, because they apply this kind of pattern. Okay, but if you try after a few seconds, milliseconds or minutes, you will find your data up to date. This is not, it's not a problem to have your photo updated real time, so they can apply this pattern. Okay, my second takeaway, simplification versus unification. Well, this is a little bit counterintuitive. Years of object-oriented programming teach us to unify, to generalize, to reuse code. And Bertrand Meyer would probably kill me, but yeah, DDD in general and CQRS advocate for code duplication because they see simplification a more important value. Okay, so unification, in other words, means coupling, because it's true, if we take common code and we put it in an inherited class, or in even if we use composition, which has to be preferred, they tell us, over inheritance, we are coupling our classes to this single piece of code, and a change in that piece of code will have an impact on all the classes that use that code. So in some way, unification is coupling, and coupling is not always a good thing. Let's switch to the second topic. How many of you have heard of event sourcing before? Please raise your hand. Okay. Again, we are in front of an architectural pattern, and to me, the best way to show you which benefits event sourcing bring is that of seeing an example of how it allowed us to change Magento checkout. Before seeing the example, just 2 words. Event sourcing means that to represent the state of our system, we no more store this state, the value of this state, but we store all the events, all the changes that brought us there. These have 2 great benefits. First of all, we can reconstruct the state of the system at any time. We can simulate how was this information yesterday. And we also have a clue of how we got there. We know why the state of our system is that, because we have all the sequence of events that brought us there. This has great benefits that I will remark after. Let's see how we used this approach. This is how Magento checkout works in 2.2, but actually in Magento 2 and in Magento 1. Every time we place an order, product stocks are updated. The catalog inventory is updated when we place an order. That means that under the hood, all the stock item records are locked because they have to be updated, so we have to guarantee data consistency. But that means that the user that are purchasing even other products bounded to the same stock items must wait. And we know that the worst place where we have users blocked is checkout. This is a conversion killer, okay? What changed in Magento 2.3 thanks to the event sourcing? When we place an order, we append a product reservation in a table. We no more, we don't update records. We only insert new records. We only need to track the fact that for that particular product, we have to reserve some quantity. No locks, no waits, no conversion killer code. Well, I have to be honest, we didn't have much choices, because since we switched to a multi-source inventory, choosing from which source to deduct products can be a time-consuming operation that can't happen at checkout problem. It will be not feasible. So we had to move the logic from placing the order to fulfilling the order. This way, we only need to know how many products to reserve. We are not interested when we place an order to know which is the source from which we will deduct. And this is what actually happens in real life, because when an order is placed in your shop, inventory is not updated in real time, unless you buy on Amazon that a drone takes off and brings the things to your house in seconds. But that's another story. Warehouse is updated when effectively products are shipped. And so, in some way, thanks to this paradigm, we also mapped a situation more similar to the real domain we have in place. Well, this is the product reservation table. This is what's called the event store. This is where we record all the events that cause product deduction or addictions. Because you see, for example, if I have an order of 5 items of that SKU, we track that we have to reserve 5 of that products. Then we ship 2 of those, and at that time we update the source according to an algorithm. We can apply different algorithm while shipping, and at the time we update the source data. Remember, the source is where we write the state of the system, and we compensate in this table, appending a +2, telling, okay, now my source is updated, you can compensate 2 on the reservations. We don't need these 2 reservations anymore. Data consistency is guaranteed by the fact that this is the formula that is used to calculate saleable product quantity. So we get the quantity we have in sources, and we subtract, okay, our thresholds, because this is a configuration allowed on Magento, and the reservation that we placed. And since we are reading from our stocks, this is consistent. We don't risk any stock breaks. So I think that the benefits are clear. Let me recap a bit. Since this kind of events, product reservations are immutable objects, we only append them, so we never update a table. We never need to lock a table. This brings the performance improvement that we have seen, and furthermore, having all the information that brought us to have those reservations and those quantities add a brand new set of business information that we can extract from the table. This is one of the benefits of event sourcing. Since we have the history of what happened in our system, now we are able to change code, simulate what happens, because we have all the steps that brought us there. Drawbacks. I admit I had to Google to find some drawbacks of event sourcing. And well, obviously not very well known, so it's something that people have to get used to, but this is true for every new technology. It requires more analysis, of course, because it's a different pattern, so we have to analyze our problem to understand if it's feasible to use it or not. And yeah, we have to deal with the fact that we need more disk space because the event stores, the tables that store all the events can grow big. But nowadays, data is really cheap. I think that is not really a drawback. And this is my third last takeaway. Coding is different from software design. I think that at a certain point of our career as developers, it must be clear that coding and designing software are a bit different. If we learn how to design our software, even with small changes, we can get great benefits, great improvements in our code, and I showed you how MSI and Magento 2.3 have these improvements. So, in which way we can become better software designer? In my experience, contributing to Magento helped me grow a lot, because I had the opportunity to work with these guys and girls that mentored me, to which I can ask questions and they answer me. Thank you very much. Now it's your turn to ask me a question or two, maybe, I don't know. Do you have some? No questions, no glory. A question there.
In what way did you start contributing? Did you select some tickets from repository or something, or you just started from suggesting some solutions?
Thank you. Well, I have a particular story. I developed multi-source for Magento 1, and when I knew about this project, I wanted to join the team because I had something to speak about, something to give back. So I joined the group. I asked if I could attend the weekly meeting that the engineering team has about this project and also about all the other projects. And I was welcomed, and then I began to study the technical documentation, because a thing that I didn't say is that MSI is considered a very good reference as best practices, best development practices, and best documentation. We have technical documentation and user guide, very well done. I read the documentation, I started to understand how the project was designed, and I started contributing by implementing small pieces of the project. And actually, for example, I implemented a lot of things related to reservations. This is why I like to talk about them. But you don't necessarily have to write great pieces of code. You can contribute just by picking an issue, changing a line in documentation. Everything counts. And Magento is very grateful for this, because every contribution in the end is for us, because it's us that use Magento in our daily job. So if we contribute to make it better, we contribute to make our work better.
Thanks and for your presentation. And from my point of view, it will be really interesting, like to hear some insights from internal work of that core MSI team. And because Magento is really proud that they made this module like with community, and they take this module as an example, which what is fine code, because there was a lot of questions if we need some example of good code, where we can find it, and they like answered that. And second question is like, how many times did you change the internal architecture of MSI? Because I know that you had a lot of that. How is it happening? Like, why, and how many people take decision to do that?
Thank you for your question. First of all, I suggest you, every one of you, if you are interested in joining, I suggest you to join us on the Slack of engineering team, and you will be welcome. There are channels for every project, and MSI is one of these. You can start from there, and according to the second question, we have an architect that tells us how to do things, explains how to do things. We can discuss about those things. I had a lot of discussions about how to implement reservation with him. His name is Igor Miniailo, and that's why I told you that it's a great learning opportunity, because speaking with these people gives you insight on how things are creating from the ground up. So don't be scared, because people like me, that's part of the community, so I'm just one of you, are there just to welcome you and to introduce you. If you are a bit shy, if you are scared of these gurus, I understand, because it was the same for me, but I dared to try. Someone today in the big room talked about dare to try. Try it, do it, because we are there to help our platform, because in the end it's our platform, okay? So feel free to contact me, contact any maintainer, any people that you know in the community, and ask them to introduce you one step at a time. You don't have to write thousands of lines of code to be recognized as a contributor. So don't be shy, don't be afraid of making just the first little step, and you will see the benefits. What you can get back. The more I give to Magento, the more I get back. It's an unfair game. I don't manage to give more than what I receive by experience. Thank you.